The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get-advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
I'm Toby Manhire, and this is Juggernaut, the story of the fourth Labour government. A podcast in 6 parts.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it?
This nation is at risk.
What do you think you're up to now, you perverted little liar?
I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
Most radical overhaul in the history of New Zealand's administration.
Juggernaut, the story of the fourth Labour government. Made with the support of New Zealand On Air. Listen now on The Spin-off or wherever you get your podcasts. This is the Spin-off Podcast Network, with an emergency episode of Gone by Lunchtime. Meka Whaitiri has defected from the Labour Party. I repeat, Meka Whaitiri has defected from the Labour Party. Tēnā koutou katoa, this is Toby Manhire, and I'm joined via the magic of the internet by Annabelle Lee-Mather and Ben Thomas. Kia ora kōrua.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. The thing is, I was going to do an enthusiastic intro, but my heart's not in it because I'm leaving.
You're defecting too.
I'm leaving
from this podcast.
Yeah,
Which are you? Which rival upstart podcast are you planning to join?
I'm going to go and work as an intern on The Detail, but I
interviewed for that.
The thing is, it's just that it hasn't been working. No real specifics. Just a vague kind of sense that maybe I would kind of flower more as my true self if I just left. You know,
I see what you're doing.
I was going to tell you at some point,
what you're doing here. Before we get into that extended metaphor, thanks to Tiahe Butler for making all of this work and Spin-off members. We're here, as Ben alludes to, because this morning, it's 2 p.m. on Thursday, May the 3 now, but this morning, Meka Whaitiri, the Labour MP for Ikaroa-Rāwhiti, and a minister outside Cabinet quit the Labour Party and jumped into the warm embrace of Te Pāti Māori. Now, as we speak, there are a few things that are not obvious. It's not obvious what her reasons for defecting are. It's not obvious whether she has formally notified the Speaker in writing that she is quitting the Labour Party, because if she has, then that triggers the waka jumping provisions in the Electoral Act and vacates her seat. It means that she's not an MP anymore. We'll come back to that in a bit. What she did say this morning at the Waipatu Marae in Hastings was, I have notified the Speaker I have resigned from the New Zealand Labour Party and have joined Te Pāti Māori. And she said, I intend to be seated with Te Pāti Māori when we return to Parliament. And I think she meant in the next few days rather than after the next election. First, though, Annabelle, you started getting wind of these rumours yesterday afternoon. What's it all about? What's going on? And crucially, why? What is the reason that Meka Whaitiri took this decision?
Well, I mean, I haven't spoken to Meka, and interestingly, she hasn't. I slid into her DMs, but she hasn't come back to me. But if I were to speculate, I would imagine that it probably has to do with Labour not restoring her position as a cabinet minister. She has as we know, she was demoted, I think, in, was it 2018?
Yeah, I think so.
Tobe, over allegations of some sort of dispute with a staff member.
Dispute with a staff member's arm.
Altercation is the word that seems to be the one of choice.
Yeah. Disagreement with the vulnerable shoulder area of a staffer.
So
some of those allegations were denied, I would strain to point out. Yeah.
That's right. And, she has recently, well, not that recently, but she has been given some ministerial portfolios outside of cabinet. We've seen other Labour MPs who have fallen from grace over different issues, but have their roles restored. And perhaps, and again, I'm speculating, perhaps there's some resentment that while some people are able to work their way back in, she has not been shown that same generosity. And she feels that she has gas in the tank. We know that communities in Ikaroa-Rāwhiti are currently in crisis as a result of the floods. Maybe that's increased the sense of urgency. She feels that her mahi should be recognised, or that she has more to offer. I think the challenge she may face is how to position that within her electorate so that this move seems purely altruistic and, for the greater kaupapa of Māori representation, and not something that's been perhaps driven by personal ambition. And I think, we saw with her announcement today, she was emotional, teary, not something we usually see from a wahine like Meka. And so far, the response seems to be that people are buying her narrative. They're believing the story that she's telling them, and there seems to be a fair amount of sympathy and aroha and tautoko for her at this moment. It's important to remember, though, that Ikaroa-Rāwhiti bleeds red through and through. And it's been 27 years since anyone's managed to flip that electorate. The last person was Tuariki Delamere, when he stood for New Zealand First way back in the day. And, a litmus test of how strong the support is for Labour in Ikaroa-Rāwhiti is that when the foreshore and seabed legislation was passed, it's argued that no iwis lost more than the people of Ikaroa-Rāwhiti by virtue of the fact that they own a lot of the whenua along their coastline. So in terms of undisturbed possession, they could really prove that. And yet it still wasn't enough to flip Parikura Horomea out of that seat. Parikura, who of course was Meka's mentor and the person she replaced when she won that by-election after he passed in 2013. So winning the hearts and minds of such a tūturu Labour electorate, I think, will not be as straightforward as perhaps people might think it is, even though there's strong support for her as an electorate MP. It's going to be a fascinating race.
Yeah. And if you look at even when I think Marama Fox came within maybe 3,000 or 4,000.
Yeah, it never got too close.
Even then, that's still a buffer, but also the party vote is overwhelming, which tells its own story, right? Like
only 12% for the Māori Party at the last election in that seat, and over 60% for Labour. So strong support for Labour in that electorate.
Ben, going back to the decision itself, John Tamihere, the Māori Party president, spoke a bit in introducing Whaitiri this morning about looking after the Māori population. She didn't so much. And do you think that's the line that will develop, as Annabelle suggests, in the hours and days to come? Or is it very much about, and maybe they're connected, about that feeling, again, as Annabelle says, that she'd done her time, done her penance, was on the trajectory back in, had been restored to a ministerial role. She was sitting in the anteroom, and then Stuart Nash gets fired, and she is not given the dignity of being returned to the cabinet table. Is that what this is about, do you reckon?
Oh, I mean, once you start trying to figure out the motives, once you knock it down rationally, grudge seems to be almost the only one left. you would think, she's got a strong chance of winning it. Labour will have a tough time finding a strong candidate. She is the incumbent, albeit for the Labour Party. So, you wouldn't write her off. It's not a suicide mission like Gaurav Sharma, but at the same time, you would think that she would have been much more assured of safety if she had stayed with Labour as the incumbent there. In terms of personal advancement, she's a minister. In terms of helping the electorate, she's currently the minister for, on the Cyclone Recovery Task Force for her area. That's gone now. She can't contribute in that way. Sure, she's been out on the ground meeting with people and talking to people. There was some criticism early that she was a bit MIA, but she'll be meeting and greeting with people, but to what end? Basically for photo opportunities now. So it's hard in terms of, it was floated on RNZ that maybe Labour has caused some disaffection with its Māori caucus by stepping back from things like co-governance. But when you actually look at the suite of actual policies, the co-governance elements of Three Waters have been retained even from the reset. The Māori Health Authority, which they call co-governance, is up and running. The co-governance elements of the RMA reform are still in place. Labour hasn't backtracked on anything except these very nebulous notions, about he puapua, which were never concrete policies. So even John Tamahiri in his speech said Dame Tariana Turia left the Labour Party and founded the Māori Party because of a difference over policy. And he said that that's not what Meka's doing. There's no difference.
He said it wasn't the same thing.
Yeah, he said it wasn't because of a difference in policy. The only thing that is left is essentially, the grudge theory. Either that, or it's John Tamahiri's theory that this is some essentially sort of what's it called? Eat, pray, love kind of self-actualization journey that doesn't have anything really to do with New Zealand politics and has a lot to do with Meka Whaitiri's sort of internal narrative or sense of herself. I'm not sure that I buy that either. It really does seem to be that she does not like being told not to hit staff.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could also, I suppose, read it another way, which is that she sees that she can achieve more for her constituents and for Te Ao Māori generally from a position within Te Pāti Māori, who may well be coming back and, may have a role after the election as a coalition partner. So, that's the other part of it. The other thing we don't know is whether she's an MP anymore. As we speak, Parliament is sitting. She's not there. She's up in Hawke's Bay. But because of the waka jumping legislation, the Editorial Integrity Amendment Bill, I think it was called, that was introduced as a requirement of New Zealand First support after the 2017 election, the waka jumping bill requires that if an MP notifies in writing the Speaker that they have left the party that they were part of, the parliamentary party that they were part of, then automatically that waka jumping provision kicks in and the seat is vacated. In her speech this morning, she appeared to say that she had done that. We don't know as we speak the details. We're trying to seek more from the Speaker's office and from the Māori Party. But the Labour Party, meanwhile, has said, Carmel Sepuloni and Kelvin Davis came out and said that they wouldn't invoke waka jumping, which is the other track it goes down if the MP does not notify the Speaker in that fashion. Do you have a sense, Annabelle, putting your constitutional scholar hat on, of what is going on? I would like to, by the way, say thank you to Andrew Geddes for talking me through it this morning. But do you know what's going on? And if she has vacated that seat and will not be, will the people of Ikaroa-Rāwhiti be able to say, hang on a minute, it's quite an important time around here, we could use an MP?
Honestly, I'm somewhat confused about what the status of her position currently is. I mean, clearly she feels that she's still an MP and she intends to sit with Te Pāti Māori when Parliament sits again. But then I've read stuff that says that she she's actually resigned from Parliament, and that's not the case. I'm not 100% sure. What I think is smart, though, is that Labour is saying they won't invoke the waka jumping legislation. I'm assuming that's because they're going to rely on Adrian Durafi to give her the boot instead, and they get to look like they're above the fray. Just coming back to what Ben said earlier in terms of personal ambition, I mean, the alternative could be that Meka felt like she had done all that she can under Labour, and she'd had a come to Jesus moment and had seen or had the epiphany that only a independent Māori Party can achieve the gains that Māori want, and she's decided to go out with a bang. And her legacy is then that she either helps to grow Te Pāti Māori or not, but she's gone out on her terms. You know, maybe she was getting ready to retire anyway. I just don't know.
Okay, so the Speaker has said that Meka Whaitiri is now an independent MP. I just checked Twitter.
Okay, but we're trying to digest this as it happens. My understanding is that if she has notified him under, I think it's Section 55B of the Electoral Act, that she is no longer a member of the Labour Parliamentary Party, 55A and 55B, yeah, here it is, that seat is then vacated. But because,
does
the
it apply if you've won that electorate? Does that apply if you've won that electorate, though, and you're the electorate MP?
Yes, it
right.
does.
Fascinating.
And in the Jamie Lee Ross example, remember him, he left National and formed his own party, but because he didn't formally write to the Speaker notifying them of that and merely vocalised it,
and because National did it.
he was removed from the National Caucus. He was removed from the National Party, and he was still afforded this whole parliamentary service wraparound. So he was able, in many ways, it's a better position. You can still say you're serving the people of your constituency. I'm confused by that. So maybe she hasn't formally notified him in writing. And if so, then Labour has indicated that they would not invoke the waka jumping. So that does mean that she remains in Parliament and can sit with Te Pāti Māori. Because Labour chooses not to go through the process of the waka jumping provisions.
I mean, it looks like a shambles. It looks like she did intend to resign, but she didn't know that would mean she lost her seat, and so she and her attorney John Tamahiri have been talking to the Speaker's office, and they've found some. It seems like they've found some kind of workaround. There was no signature. There was
look. We would advise you to look it up. We don't know.
The reality is that she clearly signalled that she was resigning from the party as of today. And so what actually, John Tamahiri was talking about emancipation and being freed from the shackles of Labour as if she was being liberated from a prison camp. But actually what emancipation means is, on a technicality, feigning that she's still a member of Parliament so that she can take a public salary and taxpayer money to finance her re-election bid. And this whole thing is the most cynical, shallow exercise I have ever seen from a departing MP.
Whoa! We just talked about Jamie Lee Ross.
Jamie Lee Ross never said. He didn't say I am. Like, he actually said, I'm staying as part of National. They can try and kick me out or whatever. Meka Whaitiri said publicly, John Tamahiri said, we have informed the Speaker that Meka Whaitiri has resigned from the Labour Party and is joining Te Pāti Māori, which would trigger the waka jumping legislation, and now they're relying on a technicality to basically keep the public money flowing, and it turns all of his high flowing rhetoric into a bit of a joke.
Well, we need to revisit that, and we'll get back to that next time. Obviously, it's just a developing story. What about the situation for Labour? I mean, obviously the kind of scale of this is intensified by the fact we're dealing with a minister. This isn't a disaffected backbench MP. It's a minister of the Crown. Moreover, the Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, was off with Prince William at Kensington Palace, prepping for the big day on the weekend, for the Coronation, which everyone is very excited about. I'm assuming you guys are going to be covering it live. To do it while the PM's away, is that cynical or accidental? And more to the point, I guess, Annabelle, how damaging is it for Labour? How damaging is it to lose an MP and a minister? 65 seats they began with, down to 62 now. Gaurav Sharma and Jacinda Ardern, who, if you missed it, she resigned. How much of a bloody nose is it for Labour, for Chris Hipkins, who are meant to be focusing, remember, on the bread and butter, not on sacking Stuart Nash and resigning waka jumping Meka Whaitiri?
It's definitely a bloody nose. I don't think they're going to bleed to death over it, though. But I think what it does is it puts them on notice to be mindful of how they treat their Māori MPs, and now is probably a good time to do a little bit of soul-searching and self-reflecting as to, because like Ben said, this is not necessarily an issue of policy. It's not like Tariana walking the floor. And this comes down to, interpersonal relationships. And so are there any other MPs that are disgruntled? Has anyone had a beloved ministerial position taken off them, or denied a promotional opportunity? Those sorts of things. So, potentially, I think, there could be concern that this might start a little trickle of Māori MPs who could potentially cross the floor. So I think it's wise on their part that they're not coming down with the big hammer to smash her with the waka jumping bill, and probably they need to be doing a check-in with their other Māori MPs to see how tight they are.
Ben Thomas.
Look, Missy, I would assume that there's some symbolic sort of value in that for Tamahiri, that while Hipkins is over schmoozing with the crown, the literal crown, that Meka is declaring her independence. So I don't think it's a mistake in that sense. I think that was probably pretty carefully choreographed. It's obviously very inconvenient for Labour. It now makes one of the, what they would have thought of as one of their safest seats of fight. It does increase the momentum behind Te Pāti Māori. There's certainly a sense of sort of momentum around the party right now. They are tending to be a bit of a sort of home for disgruntled MPs. Lewis Wall says that she's going to stand for them in Manurewa.
Has she said that? I don't know.
Or is that just rumoured?
It's been talked about. Sorry. I mean, Meka Whaitiri was a big supporter of Louisa Wall, if that means anything. Yeah. It certainly has that sort of sense that John Tamahiri is running a recruitment drive that is working. It does. Those are kind of upward trajectory moments for parties, aren't they?
It's an impressive and super fun play for John Tamahiri, no doubt. And he'll be enjoying running rings around Labour at the moment. I think the Māori Party, though, Te Pāti Māori, need to play this out incredibly carefully from here, because there will be a generation of Māori who may not like the fact that this went down when Hipkins was out of the country. People talk a lot about Parikura and his kanohi kitea, his rangatira ki te rangatira approach to politics, being seen, meeting chief to chief. And I think there will be some people that don't like that this went down without any prior knowledge, without it being communicated to Labour's leadership, doing it while Hipkins was out of the country. I think the other thing Te Pāti Māori need to be mindful of is that they've done an incredible job over the last 3 years of reinventing themselves as this fresh new political movement. Like Ben says, they'd sort of become the party of disgruntled Labour MPs and Kaumatua. There's a lot of criticism that they weren't bringing fresh people through and that they were growing out of touch, and they were too much concerned with the woes of iwi leadership and not considering, what was happening for ordinary Māori in the cities and that sort of stuff. So I think they've got to manage this very carefully, or it could come back to bite them. And they also need to bear in mind that, Ikaroa-Rāwhiti, really the big population base is Upper Hutt, Lower Hutt, Wainui o Mata, and the concerns of Māori there are not necessarily the concerns of Māori that live on the East Coast. And while this narrative at the moment might be really appealing to young people, it's not necessarily young people that get out and vote on election day. It's those older ones. So,
thank you, Annabelle. Great points. You're quite right. It will be interesting to see how it affects, and it's no sure thing how it will affect that kind of dynamic with Rawiri Waititi and Debbie Ngāruapaka, who've become quite a kind of bold duo at the top of the party. We got to go. Let me just say the latest is that the Speaker has confirmed he has received no letter of resignation, but that Whaitiri has indicated, so he's received not a notification, but an indication, I don't know what form that took, and that he believes she has, quote, followed the law to the letter, and so therefore is now an independent MP. So, maybe it was a genius move to get Labour to pledge that they wouldn't invoke any waka jumping, and it looks like, best we can tell now, at 2:20, best we can tell, Meka Whaitiri will be caucusing with the Parliamentary Māori Party.
I was going to say, JT does come from a legal background, so I'm pretty sure they would have done their homework to find a way to make this work. I doubt that they would just blunder into this. So,
all right, we're going to be back next week. We'll be talking about this a bit more, among other things. Kia ora, thank you.
Kia ora, I'm Duncan Grieve, founder of The Spin-Off. You can help us keep all of The Spin-Off's award-winning journalism free for everybody by becoming a member today at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Talofa lava. I'm Madeline Chapman, editor at The Spin-Off. If you have the means, consider supporting our high-quality journalism by becoming a Spin-Off member. Sign up now at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.